Hello and welcome to this virtual walking tour as part of ULI's Environmental, Social and Governance Symposium. I'm Linda Weichel, Principal of Weichel Consulting, Impact Advisory Services, and I will be your tour guide for this tour. At this stop, we'll be learning about the St. Lawrence neighborhood, and I'll be interviewing Suzanne Kavanagh, who's a resident, Chair of the Development Committee and past President of the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association, and Carla Munoz, a previous resident of the neighborhood, as well as a Senior Project Manager for Capital Projects at the University of Toronto. Now, just a little background, the St. Lawrence neighborhood was created in the 1970s as a mixed-use, mixed-income community with 3,500 co-op housing units across 40 acres of land. The idea was born from David Crombie to repurpose the rail lands and parking lots to bring housing to the neighborhood. It set a precedent on what a thriving, inclusive neighborhood looks like, with affordable housing, along with mixed housing, shops and services, green space, and schools. It's grown over the years and has continued to be a desirable neighborhood to live in, with condo owners, tenants, and co-op owners coexisting. So to hear more about the successes and challenges of this area, we welcome Suzanne and Carla. So I'd like to invite both of you to briefly describe the neighborhood from your perspective and its significance or contribution to the community and the city. And we'll start with Suzanne.
Great, thanks, Linda. Well, as you mentioned, yes, it is mixed housing within a mixed area. And so with the St. Lawrence, just to give you a bit of perspective, the boundaries run from Yonge Street over to Parliament and from Queen Street down to the rail corridor. And as you mentioned, the co-ops was sort of the spearhead for this, and the spine along the St. Lawrence, what we now call the David Crombie Park, is the impetus that started the co-ops. But fast forward to today, and my role as far as development is that we are a mixed use area, in that when you're walking down the sidewalk, in particular on the Esplanade, no one knows if you live in Toronto housing, a co-op, a townhouse, or a rental or a condominium. So I call it sort of the equalizer. And it's a very vibrant area. And so at the same time, it's also a challenge trying to maintain that we still have that diversity and that uniqueness.
Okay, thanks, Suzanne. And Carla, your view on the neighborhood and its significance.
Well, I guess the David Crombie's ideal of a community neighborhood that it was for everyone is a current existing reality that actually has been thriving for a number of years. I think the neighborhood holds diverse socioeconomical background, people that can actually cohabitate and enjoy actually a community equally.
That's great. So why don't we move on to an assessment of how it's done over the years? Suzanne, can you speak to the successes of this neighborhood and or any challenges that you see?
Well, actually, we have a bit of both. And so being in where the city started, so there's a lot of heritage here. So when you start taking a look at current development, we have to make sure that we're still embracing heritage and not erasing it. So it's sort of a challenge as well as a success. And so we do work with developers, and right now we have them where some of them are very much embracing the heritage and will work around that, where others not so much. So it's an ongoing challenge for this area. And one of the things that we're really good at with our development committee is to make sure that we get to the developer as quickly as possible so that we can be inside the tent influencing where we can, as opposed to out the other end, where oftentimes some development applications will end up at what was once called the OMB, was then LPAT, and now today it's called OLT, or the Ontario Land Tribunal.
I'd love to dive into the experience of co-op housing, more specifically with Carla. Carla, can you speak to the successes or challenges of the co-op housing experience at St. Lawrence?
Yeah, I think the St. Lawrence market community has mostly been successful thanks to the co-ops. There are several co-op housing in there. As many of you know, co-ops actually were an idea probably founded around 1840s in England that actually was transported into the New World, let's call it that way, and not really highly used until the 1970s, at least in Toronto. There are a fantastic alternative to housing because co-ops are actually self-regulated organizations which put basically the responsibility of managing, running, and operating their buildings into their community, into the community that actually lives in it. So that way, you make people responsible for their own living rather than actually having someone else and other organizations living it. So that means that there is a care that goes into actually these buildings that no one else could do. It's like owning your own house, basically. And I think that is one of the major successes that actually keeps a neighborhood thriving, because the tenants or the members of these co-ops keep the housing and their surroundings as if they were their own houses. So on the success side, I think is the co-ops have played a huge role because of the reasons that I just mentioned, but also the challenges that we're facing right now is that we have, with the increase of actually housing market everywhere else in the city, we end up having actually multi-generational tenants or members actually within the co-op housing. The co-op housing was formed to actually have an affordable way of living that allows you to save money, and then afterwards actually you can purchase your own house, similar of what I recently did. But many people cannot do that these days with the actually affordability. So what happens is that the kids end up living in there and the grandkids actually living in there as well, because they're all members of the co-op. So that actually reduces the availability for other people to actually move out of the co-op housing and replenish that, availability on affordability on the house.
And that's really something that the whole city or world is grappling with right now. And perhaps we could move to our final question, where we're seeing the real estate sector surviving and actually thriving in some ways through this pandemic. But yet we've seen so much the inequities that are present, the more extreme weather. There's a lot to consider as landowners and developers move forward. So how would you suggest, with both of your experience with the St. Lawrence neighborhood, how would you recommend we address the inequities in housing access and affordability while harnessing this growth that we expect to see?
If I could.
Or Suzanne.
No, I just wanted to come in quickly and just to focus on some of the comments that Carla made, because I think we need to go back and celebrate the success. And so it's important that that our audience knows that the St. Lawrence is sort of the leader as far as co-op housing in the city. And even to this day, we oftentimes see students coming around and traveling from all over the world to take a look at this model. And I think that, you know, because I just had a coffee with my friend David Crombie, and I thought I need to tell this story, because David at the time was very revolutionary, and so he sat down with Michael Dennis, who was actually the first housing commissioner for the city, and really what he said was, "Here's your mandate. I don't care. Just make this work." And so the success of this was that they actually broke a lot of the rules that they had in city planning at the time. And so even after these co-ops were built, it was ironic that the Ontario Architects Society slammed this. They were not supportive at all because they didn't follow their own planning policies as far as public space and public realm. So it was a bit avant-garde, but I think that it worked. And so today, what we're pushing for is to actually come back and take a look at the co-op model, because it does work. And as Carla mentioned, there is a lot of pride in where people live. And so, but again, I just wanted to come back to say this is award-winning. There is so much research, and even today, it is still being studied as an ideal model in moving forward.
I definitely echo actually what Denise is saying. As a matter of fact, it also promotes aging in place. It actually helps, actually communities to actually live together and helping each other. For example, at Windmill Line, they have even a program of actually having some of the membership or the rental basically fees that we're charged goes towards actually social a housing and to afford make someone else be able to afford a decent living. So and that alone is so incredible for this city, and I would not be able to actually have made it without actually living one of those scopes.
That's oh, Suzanne.
No, I just wanted to add, so just to go back to your question, we sort of veered off a little bit, but the idea about right now and how to make this work. And I think that there's an opportunity here because if anything, COVID has brought to light, you know, the crisis that's been happening and how do we move forward on this? And so there is an opportunity. And David and I were actually talking about this too. So the difference between a developer and a developer/builder. And the idea is to go back and make sure that if we had, if we got the groups together, so again, the success around the co-ops was to actually go to those individual groups. So the actual churches, the labor groups, and the francophones. So in our area, we have Saint Laurent. And so when you get those very focused groups, then there's that intense buy-in and protection. So I just wanted to add that even though it's just a little bit west of Jarvis, even the last co-op to go up in the area was the Older Women's Network. And so that was in 1995. So we know it still can be done. We realize and appreciate that the land values are going up, but we think there's still the opportunity for co-op and to go from there. So we just have to look at the lens a little bit differently and to make sure that it is still inclusive and part of the mix for this neighborhood and others like it.
These are great things for developers, landowners, and communities to be keeping in mind. So I want to thank you so much, both of you, for this slice of life in St. Lawrence neighborhood. And I wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.